Welcome. We are on day 145 of the chronological Bible in a year. Take a breath and take a moment to celebrate that you have set this time aside to hear God's word. Let's begin in 2nd Chronicles chapter 8. Now it came about at the end of 20 years in which Solomon had built the house of the Lord and his own house, that he built the cities where Huram had given him, and settled the sons of Israel there. Then Solomon went to Hamath Zobah and captured it. He built Tadmor in the wilderness, and all the storage cities which he had built in Hamath. He also built Upper Beth Horon and Lower Beth Horon, which were fortified cities with walls, gates, and bars, and Baalath, and all the storage cities that Solomon had, and all the cities for his chariots and cities for his horsemen, and everything that it pleased Solomon to build in Jerusalem, Lebanon, and all the land under his rule. All of the people who were left of the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, who were not of Israel, that is, from their descendants who were left after them in the land, whom the sons of Israel had not destroyed, Solomon raised them as forced laborers to this day. But Solomon did not make slaves of the sons of Israel for his work, for they were men of war, and his chief captains and commanders of his chariots and his horsemen. These were the chief officers of King Solomon, 250 who ruled over the people. Then Solomon brought Pharaoh's daughter up from the city of David to the house which he had built for her, for he said, "My wife shall not live in the house of David king of Israel, because the places where the ark of the Lord has entered are holy." Then Solomon offered burnt offerings to the Lord on the altar of the Lord, which he had built in front of the porch. And he did so according to the daily rule, offering them up according to the commandment of Moses for the Sabbaths, the new moons, and the 3 annual feasts, the feast of unleavened bread, the feast of weeks, and the feast of booths. Now, according to the ordinance of his father David, he appointed the divisions of the priests for their service, and the Levites for their duties of praise and ministering before the priests according to the daily rule, and the gatekeepers by their divisions at every gate. For this is what David, the man of God, had commanded. And they did not deviate from the commandment of the king to the priests and Levites in any manner or regarding the storehouses. So all the work of Solomon was carried out from the day of the foundation of the house of the Lord until it was finished. So the house of the Lord was completed. Then Solomon went to Ezion-Geber and to Eloth on the seashore in the land of Edom. And by his servants Huram sent him ships and servants who knew the sea. And they went with Solomon's servants to Ophir and took from there 450 talents of gold and brought it to King Solomon. 1 Kings 9, starting at verse 15. Now this is the account of the forced labor which King Solomon conscripted to build the house of the Lord, his own house, the Millo, the wall of Jerusalem, Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer. For Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had gone up and overthrown Gezer and burned it with fire, and killed the Canaanites who lived in the city. And he had given it as a dowry to his daughter, Solomon's wife. So Solomon rebuilt Gezer and the lower Beth Horon, and Baalath and Tamar in the wilderness in the land of Judah. And all the storage cities which Solomon had, that is, the cities for his chariots and the cities for his horsemen, everything that it pleased Solomon to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and in all the land under his rule. As for the people who were left of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, who were not of the sons of Israel, their descendants who were left after them in the land, whom the sons of Israel were unable to completely eliminate, From then, Solomon conscripted forced laborers, as they are to this day. But Solomon did not make slaves of the sons of Israel, for they were men of war, his servants, his commanders, his charioteers, his chariot commanders, and his horsemen. These were the chief officers who were in charge of Solomon's work, 550 who ruled over the people doing the work. As soon as Pharaoh's daughter came up from the city of David to her house, which Solomon had built for her, he then built the Millo. Now 3 times a year Solomon offered burnt offerings and peace offerings on the altar which he had built for the Lord, burning incense with them on the altar which was before the Lord. So he finished the house. King Solomon also built a fleet of ships in Ezion-Geber, which is near Eloth on the shore of the Red Sea, in the land of Edom. And Hiram sent his servants with the fleet, sailors who knew the sea, along with the servants of Solomon. And they went to Ophir and received 420 talents of gold from there, and brought it to King Solomon. 1 Kings chapter 10. Now, when the queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon in relation to the name of the Lord, she came to test him with riddles. So she came to Jerusalem with a very large entourage, with camels carrying balsam oil and a very large quantity of gold and precious stones. When she came to Solomon, she spoke to him about everything that was in her heart. And Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was concealed from the king which he did not explain to her. When the queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon, and the house that he had built, and the food of his table, the seating of his servants, the service of his waiters and their attire, his cupbearers, and his burnt offerings which he offered at the house of the Lord, she was breathless. Then she said to the king, "It was a true story that I heard in my own land about your words and your wisdom. But I did not believe the stories until I came and my own eyes saw it all. And behold, the half of it was not reported to me. You have exceeded in wisdom and prosperity the report which I heard. Blessed are your men, and blessed are these servants of yours who stand before you continually and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you to put you on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loves Israel forever. He made you king, to do justice and righteousness." Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold and a very large amount of balsam oil and precious stones. Never again did such a large quantity of balsam oil come in as that which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. And the ships of Hiram as well, which brought gold from Ophir, brought in from Ophir a very great number of almug trees and precious stones. The king made from the almug trees supports for the house of the Lord and for the king's house, and lyres and harps for the singers. Such almug trees have not come in again, nor have they been seen to this day. And King Solomon granted the queen of Sheba everything she desired, whatever she requested, besides what he gave her in proportion to his royal bounty. Then she departed and went to her own land together with her servants. 2 Chronicles chapter 9. Now, when the queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon, she came to Jerusalem to test Solomon with riddles. She had a very large entourage, with camels carrying balsam oil and a large amount of gold and precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she spoke with him about everything that was on her heart. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was hidden from Solomon which he did not explain to her. When the queen of Sheba had seen the wisdom of Solomon, the house which he had built, the food at his table, the seating of his servants, the attendance of his ministers and their attire, his cupbearers and their attire, and his stairway by which he went up to the house of the Lord, she was breathless. Then she said to the king, "It was a true story that I heard in my own land about your words and your wisdom. But I did not believe their stories until I came and my own eyes saw it all. And behold, not even half of the greatness of your wisdom was reported to me. You have surpassed the report that I heard. How blessed are your men! How blessed are these servants of yours who stand before you continually and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God who delighted in you, setting you on his throne as king for the Lord your God. Because your God loved Israel, establishing them forever, he made you king over them, to carry out justice and righteousness. Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold, and a very great amount of balsam oil and precious stones. There had never been balsam oil like that when the queen of Sheba gave King Solomon. The servants of Huram and the servants of Solomon, who brought gold from Ophir, also brought algum trees and precious stones. From the algum trees the king made steps to the house of the Lord, and for the king's palace, and lyres and harps for the singers, and nothing like them was seen before in the land of Judah. And King Solomon gave the queen of Sheba her every desire, whatever she requested, besides gifts equal to what she had brought to the king. Then she turned and went to her own land with her servants. 1 Kings 10, starting at verse 14. Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold, besides that from the traders, and the wares of the merchants, and all the kings of the Arabs and the governors of the country. King Solomon made 200 large shields of beaten gold, using 600 shekels of gold on each large shield. And he made 300 small shields of beaten gold, using 3 minas of gold on each shield, and the king put them in the house of the timber of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a large throne of ivory and overlaid it with fine gold. There were 6 steps to the throne, and a round top to the throne at its back, and its armrests on each side of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside the armrests. 12 lions were standing there on the 6 steps on the one side and on the other. Nothing like it was made for any other kingdom. Now all King Solomon's drinking utensils were of gold, and all the utensils of the house of the timber of Lebanon were pure gold. None was of silver. It was not considered as amounting to anything in the days of Solomon. For the king had the ships of Tarshish at sea with Hiram's ships. Once every 3 years the ships of Tarshish would come carrying gold and silver, ivory, monkeys, and peacocks. So King Solomon became greater than all the kings of the earth in wealth and wisdom. And all the earth was seeking the attention of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. And they were bringing everyone a gift, articles of silver and gold, garments, weapons, balsam oil, horses and mules, so much year by year. Now Solomon gathered chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, and he stationed them in the chariot cities and with the king in Jerusalem. And the king made silver as common as stones in Jerusalem, and he made cedars as plentiful as sycamore trees that are in the lowland. Also, Solomon's import of horses was from Egypt and Kue, and the king's merchants acquired them from Kue for a price. A chariot was imported from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150. And by the same means they exported them all to the kings of the Hittites and to the kings of the Arameans. 2 Chronicles 9, starting at verse 13. Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold, besides what the traders and merchants brought. And all the kings of Arabia and the governors of the country brought gold and silver to Solomon. King Solomon made 200 large shields of beaten gold, using 600 shekels of beaten gold on each large shield. He made 300 shields of beaten gold, using 300 shekels of gold on each shield, and the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with pure gold. There were 6 steps to the throne, and a footstool in gold attached to the throne, and arms on each side of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside the arms. 12 lions were standing there on the 6 steps on the one side and on the other. Nothing like it was made for any other kingdom. All King Solomon's drinking vessels were gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. Silver was not considered valuable in the days of Solomon, for the king had ships which went to Tarshish with the servants of Hiram. Once every 3 years the ships of Tarshish came bringing gold and silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. So King Solomon became greater than all the kings of the earth in wealth and wisdom. And all the kings of the earth were seeking the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom which God had put in his heart. They were bringing each of them his gift, articles of silver and gold, garments, weapons, balsam oil, horses, and mules, so much year by year. Now Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots, and 12,000 horsemen, and he stationed them in the chariot cities with the king in Jerusalem. He was ruler over all the kings from the Euphrates River to the land of the Philistines, and as far as the border of Egypt. And the king made silver as common as stones in Jerusalem, and he made cedars as plentiful as sycamore trees that are in the lowland. And they were bringing horses for Solomon from Egypt and from all countries. 2 Chronicles 1, starting at verse 14. Solomon amassed chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, and he stationed them in the chariot cities and with the king in Jerusalem. The king made silver and gold as plentiful in Jerusalem as stones, and he made cedars as plentiful as sycamores in the lowland. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and from Kue. The king's traders acquired them from Kue for a price. They imported chariots from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver apiece, horses for 100 apiece, and by the same means they exported them all to the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Aram. Thank you for listening. I pray that the seed of God's word will be planted in your heart and will continue to grow.